So anybody who's used ear training apps for any length of time with a degree of seriousness probably knows the pain of trying to transfer that skill, so-called skill, to real music. The idea that there even is a path from app to real music is a problem. Real music actually should be part of your ear training and overall musical education and practice routine and whatever from the beginning. I mean, as soon as you're doing ear training apps, you should also be trying to apply these skills in real music. Being good at an ear training app is not really worth anything, unfortunately. Even my own app, Sonofield, you can get all of the, gold gems and everybody's, thinks you're the man because you've got it down. But if you can't do it in real music, does it really matter? I'm going to talk about melodies and chords today, sort of separately in their own sections, and then maybe we'll draw some conclusions at the end about the whole process. So let's get into it. So ear training apps usually teach melody in one of two ways. The first, which is sort of the traditional approach, is an intervallic approach where you're learning melodic intervals like a perfect fifth or a major second, whatever, minor sixth, and so on. And the idea is that in real music, hopefully, you'll be able to take these perceptions of absolute distances between notes, which we call a melodic interval, and hear them back to back. Oh, it went up a fifth, then down a second, then down a third, then up a seventh, and so on like this. The other type of ear training for melodies that's done is contextual ear training, which, for me, there's no comparison. Like, real music is contextual and your training should be contextual too. Melodic intervals are a support to that. They're not the main event. So I'm not saying don't train melodic intervals, but I'm saying that if you're going to focus on something, focus on contextual training, because real music is contextual. So the core problems that you'll face when you try to do real music, melodies in real music, is number one, changing harmony, right? Like the chords are constantly changing underneath the melody notes, which causes all sorts of different relationships to happen. That's a very complex thing, and is really worthy of probably a whole video on its own. Secondly, there's arbitrary instrumentation in real music. That is, the melodies you hear are played on any number of different instruments with all sorts of different instruments surrounding them, and there's voices and everything else. In the ear training app, it's a very constrained environment. Sometimes it's just a piano you're hearing, or in the case of Sonofield, there's a drone with a particular sound, and you can change that sound, but there's only so many sounds that you can do, and it's not generating real music with complex instrumentation on the fly, and all of that causes complexities of perception that the app can't account for, and that's why you need to be engaging with real music from the beginning. The mindset you have when you are, listening in an app situation is, I'm training now. Here I am on the phone. Yes, ding dong, ding dong. It's not like when you're listening to real music. Usually in real music, you're just thinking like, damn, this is it. I like this. And so there's a mindset difference about training environment versus, real world situation or whatever. And so this perhaps needs to be bridged as well. Okay, so what's the solution for this? How do we transfer the skills from a melodic ear training app into real music? Well, first of all, you need to be able to recognize scale degrees or intervals if you're going that route in the app, like perfectly. The app is a simplified training ground. It's not real music, right? You can learn to get them perfectly in there. It's like having training wheels on. And even though at first it may seem like you're never going to be able to do it, you can do it. You can do it. It's just a matter of familiarity. You need to learn the pure, raw, unobscured feeling state of every scale degree if you're doing contextual ear training, so that you know what you're even listening for, what you're feeling for in real music. Then, simultaneously, you need to be engaging with real music, both from a listening point of view and a creating point of view. Listening, by which I mean trying to transcribe and understand the melodies that you hear, even in just very simple music, even if it's music that you wouldn't normally listen to, children's music and nursery rhymes, pop music, folk, country, whatever. You need to be trying to do that so that your brain has to deal with how to solve the problem of it understands what the pure feeling states are, but it's presented with this complex messiness. And your intention is saying, figure it out, bro, basically. And through trying and failing and struggling, you start to actually get it. Well, your brain starts to figure it out, and suddenly it starts to feel like, oh, right. I see how the feeling of 3 from the app that I know so well, it is here. It is here. Even despite the arbitrary instrumentation and the changing chords, and it's a voice and all this different kind of stuff, it actually is there. But all of the trappings are so distracting, trappings by which I mean the other instruments and what's going on in the music, that it kind of overwhelms you at first. And you don't know how to kind of part the waters so that you can hear the scale degrees clearly, directly, that's really the main course of action. So how about some exercises then that you can do to actually work on this? Number 1 is listening to real music with correct information in mind and making the connection between the training room, which is the app, and the pure feeling states you've learned there, and the complexity of real music. So you need to learn or transcribe the melody of a song, know what the key is, so that you can understand what those scale degrees are. Then, as you are listening to the song, both you singing it, you playing it, you listening to the real song, you listen with the knowledge in mind. You know the melody goes 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 1, for instance. And as you listen, you keep that in mind and you repeat. You pause, you sing. You listen again with the knowledge in mind. As the notes go by, you say, 3, 4, 3, Something happens in this process. You're essentially providing your brain this potent soup of information that it can synthesize and sort of figure it out. That's really at the core of how this gets done. Secondly is sort of the same thing, except that you are producing the melodies. So you're improvising or writing melodies over something, over a drone, over a backing track, over music you're writing, over your band's jamming, whatever it is. The point is that you need to some way be producing melodies where you know what the key is and you know what scale degrees you're playing. So it's very easy on many instruments to play scale shapes without really knowing anything of what you're doing. Not to say that's wrong, but in the case of ear training, you do need to know to some degree. And you need to be conscious that when you're playing your melody, you're playing 1, 5, 6, 5, 1, 7, 1, 5, sharp 4, 5, 2, 3, 2, 1, whatever it happens to be, of the key I'm talking about now, not of the chord, of the key. So that as you're playing, you keep all this in mind. And again, this connection starts to happen where the intention of what you want to hear melodically, the sound of and the feeling of the notes that are produced, the visual shapes on your instrument, the knowledge of the scale degrees, this information soup is presented and it will be synthesized in time the more you do this. Another great exercise is to take any given scale degree, listen to some music in which you know the key, and sing that scale degree continuously or play it over the music as all of the complexities of the music is changing, so that you hear how that complexity, that arrangement, that changing harmony affects the perception and the feeling state of the scale degree that you're singing. The trick here is that, again, this parting the waters situation, you don't want to get lost in the surroundings. You need to keep focused on what you're singing. Feel that it's 5 or 3 or 2 or whatever it happens to be. Let's take an example. I'll play in C because, what's a good teacher do? Let's take a degree like 2. Does it still feel like 2? Like this, but for any scale degree. And if you keep your focus on the scale degree that you're singing, something kind of magical happens where it's like simultaneously hear the two-ness of it, the feeling state of two, and yet the changing harmony and arrangement and things like accentuate and shift and shade the thing in different ways. It's almost like a particular object very well, and then you see it out in the world in broad daylight, and then you see it in shadow, and then you see it under a strobe light, and then you see it on the dance floor, and then you whatever, see it under blue light or something. You might be confused at first, but the more you can kind of block out the changing environment, it's not even blocking it out, but it's somehow seeing through it to find, right, that's that object that I know. The two-ness of the note is there. And so do this with any scale degree, including the tonic, of course, over any kind of changing music in which you know the key. So some final tips might be, learn to focus on the degree very clearly, on the melody. Don't let your mind get wrapped up in the holistic happening of the music. Of course, we all love to get wrapped up in the holistic happening of the music. That's what listening to music is all about. But from this perspective, you are in a way trying to push the rest of the music to the background and have the melody remain in the foreground. Next would be to focus on immediate recognition, not calculation. That is, you shouldn't, if you can avoid it, you shouldn't be trying to figure out what a melodic note is by using some technique. Like, this is my opinion, you shouldn't be trying to use melodic resolutions unless you really have to, or using interval math unless you have to, or theory calculations or whatever else. So immediate recognition over calculation is important to me. And lastly, I say this all the time, but ignore the pitch. And I realize this sounds very bizarre, but ignore the pitches and be with the feeling of each note as it passes by, because that is what you learn to recognize. That feeling is what is the same regardless of octave, regardless of key. That's what's universal in our system of Western music, is that scale degrees have a particular feeling state relative to the tonic. So ignore the pitch. Now, I'm obsessed with chords, and I have been for like all of my life, and I've spent a stupid amount of time trying to be able to hear every type of chord and voicing and inversion and whatever accurately, because I don't know why, I just need to. So I have a lot of experience trying to do this in all different ear training apps, with real music, with my own playing, with whatever. I mean, I got a lot to say about it. So the core problems then with translating the work that you do in an ear training app on chords into real music, similar to melodies. Number one is arbitrary instrumentation. In the ear training app, you're generally hearing a piano or some similar type of thing, guitar, electric piano, whatever, but you're not hearing a full arrangement where there's like two guitars and a piano and a bass and a string section and a singer, everybody going at one time. It's like the chord is distributed across the whole arrangement. It's not just someone on a piano going plunk. So arbitrary instrumentation is a difficulty with real music compared to apps. Secondly would be arbitrary voicings. Of course, if you don't know, a voicing is the way the notes in a chord are stacked. Is it C, E, G, E, G, C, or C, G, C, E, C, E, whatever. However the notes of a chord are stacked, all of those chords are all C major, but the voicings are different. The last sort of core problem perhaps is distractions, in the sense that the ear training app is simply presenting often just the harmonic instrument, just the piano, just the guitar, chord, chord, chord. In real music, you've got drums, you've got melodies, you've got other harmonic instruments, you've got a bass line, nothing is holding still, everything is shifting all the time, and that's a bit overwhelming when you've just been used to jun, 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 jun. So what's the solution to all this? Well, of course, it's similar to the melody stuff I talked about before. You need to spend time in the training environment of the app or on your instrument, preferably both, learning chord qualities individually, major, minor, suspended, minor 9, diminished 7, whatever, all these different chord qualities, so that you can recognize them as like vertical entities. As well, you have to become familiar with chord degrees, 4 chord, 5 chord, 6 chord, flat 2, flat 3, blah, 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 all that stuff, right? That's again a thing you can do sort of in isolation in an app or on your own. But then this needs to be taken to real music, and you need to provide your brain this information soup of sound, of the complexity of the arrangement and the genre, the feeling states of the chords and their degrees, and the knowledge of what it is that you're hearing. And you provide this for a wide variety of songs in different genres and different arrangement styles so that the mind can perceive what the common thread is, what's important, and what to discard. So some exercises. You need to be transcribing or trying to transcribe chords in real music like as soon as you can, really. I understand, of course, I vividly remember that for beginners, this is very hard to do. But you still have to try. Use whatever knowledge you've already accumulated in apps and your own study, and try to get the chords ahead of time without touching an instrument. At least say, for each chord that goes by, is this major, is this minor, is this something else? Do I hear a suspended chord? Is this a diminished chord? So on, so on. Make your guesses, and then do whatever you possibly can to try to work them out. Listen for bass notes, play them on your instrument, try to fumble around, play chords, use your music theory. You know, the chords in a certain key are X, Y, Z, so try those ones. The idea is get dirty and make mistakes, basically. Just constantly be trying to do the thing that you want to do, which is be able to work out chords in real music. You kind of need to fall in every hole and experience pain to know how to do it properly. Really, sorry. Next, whenever you're playing music yourself, just remain conscious of what the key is and what the chord numbers you're playing and what the chord qualities you're playing are. Even in basic songs, you just say, I'm on a 1 chord, it's major. I'm on a 6 chord, it's minor. I'm on a 2 chord, it's major. You know, should be minor if it's diatonic, but in this case, let's say it's major. You pay attention to that and you take note of it. Again, you're just supplying your mind with varied musical input and correct labels over and over and over again. In my own experience, I didn't know what I was doing, and so I had no method for trying to do this. I didn't have these exercises, that I've given here and in other videos. I just brute force transcribed hundreds and hundreds of songs, basically, or tried to. I would just put on playlists of pop stuff, folk stuff, whatever, and just go through every song, verse, chorus, get the chords next, get the chords next, get the chords next, next. Like every day, over and over and over for an hour or 2 hours every day. I don't know if that's a good thing to do, but I guess it probably is a good thing to do. If you have the motivation and the time, that's kind of getting to the whole point, right? It's real music as much as possible. But in order to not be just drowning in that, because of course as a beginner or even intermediate, if you've not really done it that much, you'll be drowning probably, and it'll be very frustrating because you kind of just can't get anything sometimes. That's why the training ground of the app is so helpful, is that you can learn things in isolation. That's why you want to play stuff on your own in slow motion so you can learn in isolation, and then try and go to real music as much as you can. So I'll give you a few tips for doing chords in real music. Number one would be that unlike melodies, the perception of a chord in any given moment is really the sum total of all tonal harmonic interaction between all the instruments. The voice is doing something, the guitars are doing this, the bells are playing that, the bass is doing this, and overall, the holistic feeling of the chord is present. Unless you're trying to get like a specific voicing that, say, like a keyboard player is doing over here. That's a different thing, of course, and you need to, again, block stuff out. But if you're just trying to figure out the chords for a song, you essentially want to be open to and receptive to the holistic feeling state of the vertical moment in the music completely. You don't need to block anything out. In fact, you let everything fuse into one quality, and it's that quality that you want to be recognizing. Secondly, the number of harmonic possibilities is like so stupidly big. All the different chords you can do and their inversions and voicings and, instrumentation, it's ridiculous. The idea that you're going to be able to get everything by ear immediately is probably not realistic, not in the short term. Especially if you're interested in like more complex genres. Like there's so many different ways to get confused and believe me. So you're gonna need some theoretical understanding to provide a framework and some understanding of kind of like typical harmonic motions and stuff, because you need to be able to limit the possibility space that your mind is even looking in. If you don't know things like the order of chords within a key diatonically, major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, what chords can be sevenths, what chords, all this type of information, then it's harder because the mind is open to all possibilities all the time. There's no way to narrow anything down. The hope is that there are clues in the music that will help you shut doors that you don't have to look in and narrow down the possibility space to try to hone in on what's actually going on there. If you're looking for more of this kind of content, consider becoming a channel member. At the Mind of Max tier and above, you get access to a whole new suite of videos that I make only available for members, which is just me sort of doing deep dives into ear training and harmony and composition and music analysis and music philosophy and whatever. And I'm just adding more and more stuff to that all the time. You can find more information by clicking the join button beneath this video. So thank you for that.